Good morning. Welcome back to Ranger's Apprentice. We last left them. They ran into the farmer, and apparently there's a wild boar loose. So, chapter 19. They rode slowly through the failing light, leaning sideways in their saddles to follow the trail left by the boar. They had no trouble tracking him. The huge body had left a deep trench in the thick snow. Even without the snow, Will thought it would have been easy. The boar was obviously had a very bad temper. It had slashed at the surrounding trees and shrubs with its tusks as it went, leaving a clear-cut path of destruction through the forest. Halt, he said tentatively when he had gone a kilometer or so into the dense forest. Said Halt a little absently. Why bother the Baron? Couldn't we simply kill the boar with our bows? Halt shook his head. He's a big one, Will. You can see the size of the trail he's left. We could take a half a dozen arrows to kill him, and even then he'd take time to die. With a brute like this, it's better to make sure. How do we do that? Halt looked up for a second. I suppose you've never seen a boar hunt. Will shook his head. Halt reined in for a few seconds to explain, and Will brought Tug to a stop beside him. Well, first, said the ranger, we'll need dogs. That's another reason why we can't simply finish him off with our bows. When we find him, he'll have most likely gone to ground in a thicket or in the dense bushes where we can't get at him. The dogs will drive him out, and we'll have a ring of men around the lair with boar spears. And they throw them at him? Will asked. Halt shook his head. Not if they have any brains, he said. The boar spear is more than 2 meters long, with a double-sided blade and a cross piece set behind the blade. The idea is to make the boar charge at the spearman. Then he sets the butt of the spear in the ground and lets the boar run into it. The cross-piece stops the boar running right down the shaft and getting the spearman. Will looked doubtfully. That sounds dangerous. And the ranger nodded. It is. But men like the Baron and Sir Rodney and the other knights love it. They wouldn't miss the chance of a boar hunt for the worlds. What about you? Asked Will. Will you have a boar spear? Halt shook his head. I'll be sitting right here on Abelard, he said, and you'll be on Tug in case the boar breaks through the ring of men around them, or in case he's just wounded and gets away. What do we do if that happens? Will asked. We run him down before he can go to ground again, said Halt grimly, and then we kill him with our bows. The following day was a Saturday, and after breakfast, the battle school students were free to spend the day as they pleased. In Horace's case, this usually meant trying to stay out of sight whenever Aldebaran and Jerome came looking for him. But lately, they'd realized he was avoiding them and had taken to waiting for him outside the mess hall. As he came out onto the parade ground this morning, he saw them waiting, smiling at him. He hesitated. It was too late to turn back. With a sinking heart, he continued on toward them. Horace! He was startled by a voice coming from right behind him. He turned and saw Sir Rodney watching him, a curious look in his eyes as he glanced at the 3 second-year cadets waiting in the yard. Horace wondered if the battle master knew about the treatment he was getting. He assumed he did. Horace guessed it was part of the toughening process of battle school. Sir, he replied, wondering what he had done wrong. Rodney's features softened, and he smiled at the young man. He seemed extraordinarily pleased about something. Relax, Horace. It's Saturday, after all. Ever been on a boar hunt? No, sir. In spite of Sir Rodney's invitation to relax, he remained stiffly at attention. Time you did, then. Draw a boar spear and hunting knife from the armory. Have Ulf assign you a horse and report back here in 20 minutes. Yes, sir, Horace replied. Sir Rodney rubbed his hands together with evident pleasure. Seems Halt and his apprentice have scared up us a wild boar. Time we all had a bit of fun. He grinned encouragingly at the apprentice and then strode away eagerly to get his own equipment ready. When Horace turned back to the yard, he noticed that Aldebaran and Jerome were nowhere to be seen. He might have thought more about why the 3 bullies would have disappeared when Sir Rodney was around, but he had too much on his mind, wondering what he'd expected to do at a boar hunt. It was mid-morning by the time Halt led the hunting party to the boar's lair. The huge animal had gone to ground in a dense clump of undergrowth deep inside the forest. Halt and Will had found the hiding place just before dark the previous evening. Now, as they approached, Halt made a signal and the Baron and his hunters dismounted, leaving their horses in the care of one of the stable hands who had accompanied them. They covered the last few hundred meters on foot, while Halt and Will were the only two who remained on horseback. There were 15 hunters in all, each one armed with a boar spear of the type Halt had described. They spread out in a wide circle as they came closer to the boar's lair. Will was a little surprised to recognize Horace as one of the hunting group. He was the only apprentice warrior in the party. All the others were knights. With 100 meters to go, Halt held up his hand, signaling the hunters to stop. He urged Abelard into a gentle trot and crossed to where Will sat nervously astride Tug. The little horse was moving restlessly as he scented the presence of the boar. "Remember," said the ranger quietly to Will, "if you have to shoot, aim for a spot just behind the left shoulder. A clean shot to the heart will be your only chance to stop him if he's charging." Will nodded, licking his dry lips nervously. He reached forward and comforted Tug with a quick pat on the neck. The little horse tossed his head in response to his master's touch. "And stay close to the Baron," Halt reminded him, before moving to resume his position on the opposite side of the circle of hunters. Halt was in the position of the most danger, accompanying the hunters who were least experienced and therefore most likely